when we used to do this panel beforehand, it was always kind of plugged as client side versus server side. Are we still actually having that conversation? Jared's like, no.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's because Jared only likes server side.
Okay, so what's your take on it,
Yeah.
Charlie?
Oh, I mean, I think it's up to the. I think both have like really good utility. I generally also lean more towards server side. I think it's a lot better streaming environment. But I think there's a reason why people do client side, interactive ads, et cetera. But it's really kind of up to the publisher. But Paramount only does server side. We do a combination of both.
Okay, I'm going to put Peter on the spot. Peter, what is server-side ad insertion? Like just
So briefly, what it means is the stream being delivered to the user, there's like a main stream, and then we're going to insert the ad as if it's part of the main content. So as far as the player is concerned, it shouldn't see any difference in the video. So like a linear channel you'd see on TV where there's ads mixed in the middle, you don't know the ads were put in there. You do because you're watching the ad, but as far as the TV is concerned, it has no idea what was the ad or what was the content.
Okay, all right, so we've got the server side, we've got the ads just kind of hanging out there just with the content, but still, client side, what about, do people talk to any of you guys here?
So we do a lot of client-side ad insertion. We have for like many years. In fact, I'd say that's one of the big draws of having the JW player on the web is that it has deep capabilities in doing client-side ad insertion. And there are some good reasons, like server-side ad insertion is like more expensive to produce, right? If you do a little bit more of the work on the device as opposed to the server, that's fancy. There's also, you get more flexibility if you could do it client-side versus server-side, because you write a whole bunch of code on the client to actually do interesting things like, auctions client-side to do for filling ad inventory, that kind of thing.
Okay, but essentially, if you are writing code on the client side, don't you have to have the engineers to write that code?
Or you could grab a library off the world. Like, Google puts out the IMA SDK, which is a client-side library that does client-side ad insertion, handles most of it for you.
Okay, but it's not really like totally you
Well,
got to have somebody doing something.
The trick here is that the server-side ad insertion is also very, very rarely hands-off, right? Client-side, especially as it gets more complex. And I actually prefer server-side ad insertion too, just to be clear. But like the direction we're heading is that they're going to be virtually indistinguishable. That is my prediction.
With client-side, you end up having to test a lot. Because anytime you change the code on the client, and if you've got one generation of devices, that's one problem. If you've got 10 generations of devices, that's 100 times the problem.
So with server-side, you end up with devices that just don't work. So instead of like being able to modify the client and be able to make changes, instead you've got dead playback and no video.
Okay, that's bad.
Well, there's ways around that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, like as we say, and this is why, as Charlie stated correctly, I hate client-side ad insertion. And you think about when you talk about, you have to do this in a client. Paramount, just the Pluto application, I don't know, it's on probably like 25 different clients. Server-side ad insertion, you don't need to do as much heavy lifting. And with stream manipulation and having different bit rate ladders and is it dash, is it HLS, there's different variations of it, and you're absolutely right. SSAI is not hands-off. It's not I'm done. It takes just as much work, but as you have to run on 25 different clients, or you got to distribute to the Roku channel. Great. Here's my Google DAI stream. I'll take care of all this stuff. You just pass me signals. It makes the integrations and being interoperable between your O&O, your partners, and kind of controlling the core of the ad tech of the decisioning is server side. And then if we need to change something in a free will or GAM ad call, we do it in one place in a server configuration, and then it's out at 25 endpoints and partners and stuff like that.
Okay, CJ's actually nodding. So
no, I mean, when I was at Local Now, I think I owned at one point every device that was on the market because we were relaunching the apps.
Okay.
And they were client side at the time. And I as the director of ad ops was sitting there tethering to Vizio and tethering my Roku devices and calling people up, hey, I'm not an engineer. And so I think when you start getting, there's a certain point where when you get out of that I'm an engineer phase, you start getting into operations, it's server side. I don't know where local now has gone since then, but when you start getting rubber meets the road with the actual ops people, you need something where I can run Charles on web. We're talking about web players. I can run Charles, HTTP watch, debug. When you start getting
that's
out,
an advantage.
yeah, when you start getting into on my Apple device, it's not running the ads on the app or and so forth. You're like, there's so much more legwork there.
But it's better to have a generalized ad insertion framework. Like we're on a bunch of different devices too. Like you can watch the Roku channel on Fire TV. We got it there. I like it's only one place, but really I care about the user. A lot of the client side work, like you get an ad and there's only so much that you can inspect ahead of time. You're not transcoding, and so sometimes it is very much like you try to play and pray and hopefully it works. And on the server side, it's different, right? There's transcoding. I don't know if anybody's ever watched like an app on their iPad, et cetera, and all of a sudden the ad comes on and like blows you out of the room, right? Audio normalization's really hard, right? And so it's really nice to be able to transcode, make sure it's actually going to be stable. And there's a lot to be said about stitching it into the stream. And then Jared talked about the adaptive bit rates. Like, everybody's Wi-Fi connection goes like this. It's really nice that it's not just like one file. It kind of like, it can go up and down in quality, and it's a lot more of a stable environment. In my opinion.